Well, welcome to another fabulous episode of My Orgasmic Life. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Gaia Morrissette. And for everybody who's getting to watch me, I'm actually wearing a mask right now so if you're like, why is her voice kind of muffled? Or if you're like, why is Gaia wearing a mask? I'm going to tell you because I had masksex a couple of weeks ago that I wanted to share with you. COVID safe masksex. And I wanted to get back into that space around how incredibly uncomfortable it was. All right. So before we get into that, actually, it's time for me to take off this mask because I don't have to wear it. There we go. Now you can see my... Whew, that's better. Okay. So, masksex. So before I get into the logistics of that, I want to, set the stage. So first of all, as a reminder, please support My Orgasmic Life and support me showing up in the world for you guys and risking. And the way that you can do that is through comments and shares and, downloading My Orgasmic Life and subscribing to My Orgasmic Life, as well as helping to pay the overhead costs of running the show. So you can become a Patreon. You can be one of my Patreon accounts, patrons, and you get all sorts of really cool interactiveness and discounts and deals and all sorts of great stuff. But you also get to help pay for this show so that it's fabulous. Okay. So the link on how to do that will be in the description after we're done and in the show notes. Okay, let's talk about sex with a mask on. So let me set the background stage. Once upon a time, pre-COVID, I had a spectacular harem of amazing lovers. And when COVID happened, I only, I needed to bubble and protect and do all the things. So I did. And one of my lovers that, I really enjoyed spending time with, he wasn't in the bubble. And the reason he wasn't in my immediate bubble was because he had a child. And so it made him a higher risk of contact. And my primary partner, Lady Bunny, has lung issues. So I've had to be super, super, super vigilant and super careful because if he has lung issues, so if he were to get it, I don't think he would survive. So the last time I was able to actually have sex with this particular lover, it was February. And so we've been spending time together, social distancing, hanging out, but no hanky-panky, no kissy-kissy, no sexy, which was brutally hard. I'll be completely honest with you. Oh my God, I just wanted to lick him. So anyways, so a couple weeks ago, I'm hanging out at Lady Bunny's place, and, I'm walking by and he's like, oh, according to Dr. Tam, it's safe to have sex now as long as you're wearing a mask. And I was like, what? I'm like, really? I'm like, I'm going to go do some research to make sure that that's safe and it's true and all the things. So I went and I dived in to make sure that it was safe and how to do it and all the logistics of it. And, so I went to a reputable website, the Health Canada, and I read the studies and the findings and I was like, okay, so they're saying basically, if you practice safe sex and you practice safe sex with a mask and you don't, touch, no saliva and no kissing and no this, then, it's safe it's as safe as possible. It's low risk of, contracting and, spreading COVID-19. I was like, okay. I'm like, after lots of conversations, research and conversations, I was like, with everybody that it might affect in my life, we all came to the conclusion that, okay, Dr. Tam says, okay. I'm like, all right. So I send a message to my lover and I'm like, woohoo, guess what? We get to have sex. It's safe to have sex. Like, we're going to have to do all these weird new protocol things, but we get to do it. So he comes over. First of all, I hope everybody's enjoying this conversation. All right, so he comes over. And before he walks into the house, he sanitizes his hands. And then he comes into the house and then, we're hanging out. But we're hanging out like from each other, wearing masks, social distancing. And then I'm like, okay. Let's start with, because we hadn't connected and we hadn't had any sexual interaction with each other since February. And this was, like in the, the beginning of September. So, that's a long time to not be physically intimate and connected to somebody, to just like jump in. And we wouldn't be able to do how we would normally have sex, right? Which was a lot of, kissing and groping and oral sex and lots of saliva sharing, basically. A lot of spit. It's usually sex. I'm like, okay, no spit. This is brand new. It's like having a new type of sex completely. It's like a new kink. So anyways, so I'm like, okay, I can go and get massaged. And I go to my massage therapist, and, he wears mask, I wear mask, and I know how to do that. Like, my body knows how to do that. I know how to do that. I've been trained to do that. So, I've been doing that for months since it's been safe to get massage. And so I'm like, okay, let's start with giving each other an erotic massage. So it's funny because, like, you got, there's all these things that you got to remember, right? Like, so you got to be wearing your mask. You got to make sure that, your hands are, that you don't touch your face, that like no touching of your face after you touch the other person's body. We had hand sanitizer, but you're like, okay, so if I hand sanitize, I have to go wash my hands because I don't want the sanitizer on my hands before I touch anybody's genitals, because that's going to set those on fire. So it's like all the things. It's like a lot of things to think about. So anyway, so he gave me this beautiful massage, which it turns out he has like mad massage skills. So yay me. I see him giving me lots of massages in his future. So he gives me this beautiful massage. It feels wonderful. It feels great to connect with each other. He gets me off a bunch of times because I'm easy that way. And, but the whole time, he's like, oh, I just want to kiss you. Oh, I just want to lick you. He's like, oh, I just want to taste you. I'm like, I hear you. I hear you. So it's his turn so that I can get, fair is fair, right? So he gets on this, we change all the sheets, we change all the stuff, we make sure that it's safe, and we spray down everything, and then it's his turn. And, I go wash my hands and do all the things that I need to do. So then it's his turn. And so I start to massage his body. And he's like, oh my God, I had no idea that you had these mad massage skills. He's like, I've never felt this good in my life. I'm like, yeah, I got skills. And again, it was so fascinating because all I wanted to do was lick him. And I can't because I'm wearing a mask and it's not safe and it's not COVID safe, and that's not on the COVID-19 sexual activity safe list. So like, oh God, I just really want to taste you. I love oral sex. So like, that's the other thing is that I couldn't, I was like, I just wanted to, put his penis in my mouth. And I'm like, I can't do that either. Like, that's just not okay either. That's not on the approved list of activities. So there was like this whole, like, I want to do more than I can do feeling, which created kind of a weird sort of like intense lust, because it's like, oh, because, you know, what we can't have, we want more of, right? So it was like, which was fascinating. So I was like, oh, this is kind of hot, right? Denial. I never get denied anything. So this is like a weird kind of experience for me. So anyways, so he gets this massage. He's super horny. And I'm like, okay, I'm super horny. He's super horny. I'm like, all right, let's do this. Let's do this intercourse thing. So again, you know, how I have intercourse is very different. Like, I usually, like, my body doesn't, no matter how horny I am, typically I'm not very lubricated on the outside of my genitals. And that's just how my vagina works. And so usually I use a lot of saliva and a lot of spit as a natural lubricant. You know, I have a very delicate ecosystem, like incredibly delicate ecosystem, and anything can knock it off balance. So I'm like, okay, now I got to use lube, and lube typically is not my friend. So I'm like, okay, I got like a whole bunch of different types of lube at my house for clients and, you know, teaching purposes and stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, I'll try one of the lubes. So, you know, first of all, I'm like, okay, we got to go wash our hands. So he goes and washes his hands, which is not near my treatment room of where we're getting massages. So he washes his hands. I go wash my hands. Then he, like, because we got to make sure we don't have sanitizer on. Then I lube up myself with lube, and then I squirt some lube on him so he can put the condom on. He gets the condom on, and so, and we're wearing masks, and so I'm like, okay, what position are we going to do this? So we've decided to do it on the massage table. So we're on the massage table, and my legs are up against the wall, and he's between my legs, and you know, he enters me, and I'm like, it's been a while since he's entered me, and so I'm like, whoa, you know, easy, slow down. We got to work this in a little bit. So then off we go. So now he's having sex with me, and we're fucking. But I can't see his face. All I can see is his eyes. That's even if I'm like, and because I'm wearing a mask, if I'm laying on my back, which I was, I can't see anything because I can't see through past my nose because the mask is over the bridge of my nose, so I can't see anything. So it's kind of like I'm like, it was very weird. It was like, one, it felt like I had a blindfold on. Two, it was kind of like breath play, which, you know, in BDSM is great. I'm kind of into, but at the same time, it was like non-consensual sort of breath play. Like because as I was breathing heavier, it was like, I felt more like I was hyperventilating, which is an intense kind of experience. And you can't like open the mask up so you can get more oxygen, so you can get more breath, because it defeats the purpose of, like, you're in close contact. So you can't do that. So you got to then you got to slow down your breathing so that you don't hyperventilate, and then, you know, which interferes in your orgasm. So it's very interesting. Like, the whole experience was very fascinating. So then I had to learn how to have like an orgasm in a different way than I would normally have an orgasm. Then we flipped around and, you know, did it doggy style, and that was a little bit easier because my body's acclimatized to, you know, having an orgasm in that position. And my face was, you know, in the thing, so, you know, I could scream a little louder, and I didn't have to worry about, you know, contamination and all these things. So then afterwards, like, okay, now we got to go, like, shower up, clean up separately from each other. So again, no cuddles, no, like, and I mean, for me, I'm not a big cuddler, but I do like to have like a little sort of like, woo, it was awesome. Let's like touch each other kind of afterwards. So it's like, okay, disengage from each other. I'll go use the bathroom first. I did the things. He had to bring his own towel. Like, there's a lot of things. So he brought his own towel and his own soap. So then he washed up and, you know, washed off the lube and all the things, and washed the hands and everything like that. And then, you know, we like put our masks back on and, you know, hung out a little bit to kind of like decompress and like evaluate what that experience was like for both of us. And then before, you know, he left, I couldn't kiss him. So that was very bizarre. I mean, I'm not a big kisser, but I do really like his lips and I really do like kissing him. And especially after we've, you know, engaged sexually, you know, a little kiss before, you know, I send him off in the world, and I couldn't do that. So it was like, we hugged. So we were wearing masks and we hugged. It was like so weird. It's a very bizarre, weird experience. I'd say, that being said, I will be doing it again. Practice makes perfect. But it's like, again, there's like all these pieces, like when you only see somebody's eyes, for example, like there's all these facial expressions that happen when you're engaging on a, not just on in an intimate level, that you need to see the micro expressions on their face to understand what those mean, like arousal responses and you know, bring close to orgasm, and the, you know, the cum face and like all these things. And instead all you see is eyes. The eyes are just doing this, raising up and down. There's like there's like all these things that you're missing out. And so you got to like, your brain's trying desperately to try to like fill in the blanks. And so, you know, a lot of communication, verbal communication needs to happen. And I mean, I'm really, you know, a lot of parts of my sexual experiences with when I have sex is I communicate a lot, and that's part of one of the things that I find really sexy. But I had no idea all the little non-verbal body cues, facial cues that I picked up on, that I had no idea that I picked up on. So I had to communicate and ask and clarify and a whole bunch of things, and my partner had to like ask and clarify a whole bunch of things that neither one of us would normally have to do, that because we could see their whole the person's whole face. So yeah, and the connection and the intimacy was different. Like in some ways it felt disconnected because we're wearing these masks and we can't freely, like there's this like barrier between us, more so than normal we practice safe sex, so we have condoms and gloves and other things, but it felt like there was this barrier between us. So on one level it felt like there was lack of intimacy, and on the other hand there was intense moments of intense intimacy because we had to look at each other's eyes, because that's the only cues I got. And I typically, when I'm engaging sexually, unless it's like I'm consciously doing sex magic, or I'm like really leaning into like, this is a moment to like, you know, to have like deep levels of, you know, intimacy around, you know, making love with my partner or whatever, or partners. Like unless I consciously choose that, I typically don't. Like I typically am in the energy and the flow of things, and I'm not a big like eye gazer during sex. Half the time my eyes are closed during sex because I'm like, really, when I close my eyes, like it intensifies all of my other senses, right? And then those other senses take in that information, and it gives me more orgasmic pleasure and more orgasmic release. But I couldn't do those things because I couldn't, so I needed more eye gazing. And so that eye gazing was incredibly intense and incredibly intimate and very vulnerable. I was like, whoa. So on one hand, there was like more intimacy and intense moments of intimacy to like disconnect. Like it was a very interesting experience. So yeah, I thought that, you know, I just wanted to share that with you guys, because some of you might be trying to figure out, like some people aren't in your bubble that you can have sex with, or you're trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I have sex in the middle of a pandemic? You know, is it possible? What are the things? How do we put the things in place? How do we normalize those things? And that becomes a part of our new sex life, because we don't know how long this COVID-19 is going to last. So yeah, it's interesting. And so some of the things that I'm planning on doing around this is like embracing it as as if it was like a kind of a new type of sex that I'm having. It's changing up the masks. I'm gonna try a bunch of different styles of masks, and see if that improves the experience a little bit more. I might actually put a blindfold on, so I'm like, okay, I'm wearing a blindfold, so it's sensory deprivation. So I'm like, okay, I can get behind that. Like my kinky, sexy self can get behind sensory deprivation, right? So let's try that. And then I need to try a bunch of different lubes, because the lube I used did not make did not make the ecosystem happy. So I got to find the right lube that will make the ecosystem happy. So I'm going to do some more experimenting with that. So there's lots of things, and I can kind of look at it as like, oh, that was awful. Oh my God, that was so awful. I don't get to do all the things that I like to do. I can look at it from that perspective, or I can be like, wow, here's a new way of having sex. Let's go on the adventure. Let's explore how all the variables, all the possibilities. Yes, it's different. It's very different than how I would normally have sex, and particularly normally have sex with this particular lover. So it really is more about, how I look at it, and looking at it as an adventure, and looking at it as curiosity, and looking at it as like all the ways that I can find new possibilities. Like there's a bunch of new, like I said, that deep level of intimacy. With that particular lover, we've been building that, but not on that degree. So that made that very quick and intense. That's something that, without wearing a mask, that wouldn't have happened necessarily with us until, we consciously decided to do that. I have to learn how to have a different styles of orgasms. So it's changing my orgasmic patterning, which is exciting because, the more patterns I have, the more opportunities I have. So like there's so many different ways that we can look at it. We can look at it as awful and we don't get all our needs met, or we can look at it as like, how can we find our needs in this experience? All right. Super, super excited to share this with you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned lots. Hope you were inspired. And remember, just because I explicitly share my sex life with you guys doesn't mean I'm inviting you to join my personal sex life. Okay? It's not an invitation to be a part of my harem. Okay, so go out there, explore, find different possibilities of pleasure, and be safe. Make sure you do all the things. If you're going to explore COVID sex, make sure you wear masks, make sure you wash your hands. And again, reminder, do not use sanitizer. If you've sanitized your hands, then don't put it on someone's genitals. Burny, burny, owie, owie. Okay? No good. And don't touch your face. Do not touch your face. Whatever your hands have touched, do not touch your face. And if your hands have touched your genitals, do not touch the other person's genitals unless you've washed your hands. Okay? So it's like there's a lot of things to remember. And wear a mask. And wear your mask properly. Don't wear your mask where it's like your nose is out. Don't wear your mask where it's not under, you can breathe. It's not under your, like, cover your face. Do the proper mask wearing things. And if you're having a hard time breathing because you're hyperventilating, because you're like getting close to orgasm, slow down your breathing. Do not open up your mask so that you can get more oxygen. Okay, just slow down your breathing because it defeats the purpose. Otherwise, you might as well not be wearing a mask, right? So you do it properly. Safety, safety, safety. All right. Remember, I love you all. You're all amazing. Thanks for listening. Share my orgasmic life with your friends. You can be found on all of the platforms, all the social media platforms. You can find me under Gaia Morrissette for all of your sexual wellness needs and education, coaching and support. You can find, and relationship stuff, relationship coaching. You can find me at succulentliving.com. For all of your BDSM education and wellness, you can find me at empressgaia.com. And have a juicy day. That's it. That's all. And support the show. Oh, actually, one more thing. I always forget. This episode was brought to you by tickle.life. Also, very important, I host tickle.life's podcast, where people tell their personal experiences, sexual experiences, relationships experiences. So check out tickle.life's podcast. Can be found on Spotify, Apple, Google, all the places that you find podcasts. All right, now that's it. That's all. Mwah. Bye-bye.